How can we make the world better? By making ourselves better. The Dr. Joe Show explores how you can make positive personal change by using his groundbreaking and highly effective I Am approach to understand who we are and why we do what we do. Your small changes can have big effects.
Join us now for the Dr. Joe Show with Mark Stiles of Stiles Law and your host, Dr. Joe Schrand.
Well, welcome to the Dr. Joe Show.
that was great. You had the vibrato, you had the tonality. You've been practicing, or is this just comes naturally to you?
I almost did like the DJ spin the record, spin the record.
Yeah.
Hey, Dr. Joe.
Yeah, it was really nice. It's good.
Yeah, I'm getting ready.
Yeah, it's. How have you been? How's the week been, Mark?
Great. Practicing the bravado. We've got some karaoke coming up.
Oh yeah,
karaoke.
And this is May 4th.
May the 4th be with you. Yeah, at Shred Show, I'm bringing out the karaoke machine. So folks that are coming to shred those private documents and pay it forward with the local Marshfield food pantry, we're also going to have the karaoke machine going. So if you're dying to come and sing a song, come on out of the car and join us and have some fun and get the oxytocin flowing, because there's going to be people cheering. I know Dr. Joe's going to come and sing one of his favorites. It's been a while since we've karaoke'd together.
Yeah, but we used to go every Thursday night before COVID hit. Every Thursday after the show, we'd go and do karaoke, sing one song. It is so much fun. We actually did a show on karaoke. Remember the 3 types of karaoke singers? The person who gets up, the person who will only do it with another person, and then the person who would rather have a root canal without anesthesia. So yeah, we did that. So Shred Show coming up, guys, May the 4th, be with you. Where do they actually go, Mark?
So our office is right on State Road 139 in Marshfield. We're the Office of Stiles Law. We're going to have the Shred It truck out there and a really organized pass through of how to roll in and roll right up to the truck and watch those documents disappear. And all we're asking is to, again, pay it forward for those in need. The Marshfield Food Pantry will be on hand for non-perishables and also your checks. I know we've talked about this, Dr. Joe, but $1 to the food pantry, who can then go to the food bank, who has access to the Boston Food Bank, gets you $4 worth of food. So if we were to go down to our local grocery and buy $100 worth of non-perishable items and bring them to Shred Show, which is great, we'd love you to do that. You give them a check for $100, they go to Boston and get $400 worth of food. So checks have 4x the power, and feel good, doing good, helping others feel valued, helps you feel valued, Dr. Joe. You know so that. True. And we're talking about the oxytocin, not the Oxycontin. You've got an event coming up with the other oxy, don't you?
That's right. May 7th, which is Fentanyl Awareness Day, down at the Mass Maritime Academy in Bourne from 6 to 9 o'clock. Our kids for Drug Story Theater have created a new show called Back to Life that's focusing on Narcan and how that can help reverse an overdose. And, our shows are diverse. We talk obviously a lot about addiction and substance use. We also talk about ACEs, adverse childhood experience and stress, and the domestic violence that can so often lead to substance use. And with that in mind, Mark, can you introduce our guest for tonight?
I would love to, Dr. Joe. I'm looking forward to this episode. We've got a brand new author, mental health expert, who uses profession to craft uplifting coming of age stories. And she's got a new book out, Dr. Joe. It's called All I Know. Really excited to chat with this individual, this therapist, this psychologist, this person who is sharing through story. Please welcome Holly LaBarbera. Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it. Holly, how do we pronounce your last name?
Again?
This is
Can I do that again?
Yeah, Holly LaBarbera.
Holly
LaBarbera. I was
LaBarbera.
close.
Very, very close.
Yeah.
It's good.
Not that close.
No, it was good. And Holly, welcome to the Dr. Joe Show. I'm so glad that you're here tonight. And the book is powerful. It's coming out June 11th. Is that right? So let's get the title of the book. Let's tell people how to get it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go from there.
Great. So the book is called All I Know. It is available June 11th. Like you said, you can pre-order it now anywhere you get books, Amazon or wherever. On my website, which is hollyclabarbera.com. You can pre-order through bookshop.org through my website, or like I said, anywhere that you typically get your books.
And it's a great book, and it talks about some very powerful things that are happening, sadly, in our community. And I just want to focus just for a moment on it's not even a disclaimer, the thing that you say right at the beginning of the book, before the story even starts.
Mm-hmm.
Could you just talk about that warning that you give to people?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't have the book in front of me, so I don't know it word for word, but the idea, and it was actually a friend of mine who had seen it in a book and appreciated it and recommended it to me. But it's just a trigger warning for people to take care of themselves, and because there are some difficult issues in the book, and letting people know that they just might want to proceed with caution if they might be triggered in these certain areas like abuse or addiction and things.
Yeah. I think that's really smart and compassionate. I'll read it. Although this is a hopeful book, and we're going to get back to that part, although this is a hopeful book, I want to advise readers that it contains depictions of mental health challenges, including depression, grief, and addiction. There are also references to abuse, violence, and suicide. Please take care of yourself while reading. Let's talk about that. What's the worry about for someone who's reading this? You do therapy. You work with trauma folks a lot.
I do.
Tell me the concern.
Well, I think this happens. People, things sneak up on people when they're not expecting it, and it can really put them in quite a state. And so I think it's respectful. I think it came also from a friend of mine reading it, who I didn't realize had been through something that is similar to what's in my book. And so we talked about that, and it was difficult for her to talk about liking my book, but also struggling with it because of her own issue. And so I just wanted for people to be able to read it if they choose, and not read it if they choose. And if they choose to read it, just to be prepared. Because, I think when you've been through these difficult things, it's easy to get back there. And if you haven't been through that, you don't understand that experience.
Right. And I think for both audiences, for those who have struggled and suffered through trauma and those who have not, it's a powerful reading because it gives you an insight into the world of some folks without judgment. And I think that's so powerful, Holly, that you're not judging anyone. How have you been able to do that? That's not an easy task.
Well, I think first off, it's a big part of training to be a therapist. So that was a really big part of my school program, getting my master's in psychology. It's something I'm very mindful of in every therapy session I have with people. And it's something that I don't think I've always executed very well in my personal life historically, and have really made an effort to do that differently as I move forward in my life, and trying to lead with compassion and understanding versus jumping to some judgment or idea about how I think things should look or do look, or, so I just spend a lot of time thinking about that and trying to do that. So I'm glad that came across in the writing, because I certainly was trying to present a lot of feeling in the book, but again, not the judgment about it.
Yeah, it does come across, and it's that compassion and understanding. It's so important. And I am very grateful because we have sponsors who are also compassionate and understanding. And I love hearing what they have to say. And it's all non-judgmental. It's always helpful. So Larry, let's take a commercial break. We'll hear from our compassionate understanding sponsors. We'll be right back with the Dr. Joe Show.
Hey folks, thank you for listening to the Dr. Joe Show. We've been investigating whether or not we want to bring sponsors into our podcast. What are your thoughts? Do you know somebody who might be a good partner with the Dr. Joe Show, who may want to align their product or service with the Dr. Joe Show? Think about it.
And we're back here live on 95.9 WATD on the Dr. Joe Show, here with author, therapist, Holly LaBarbera.
Nice.
Yeah, nice. Quick learner.
Fool me once, right?
Real nice, right. So we were talking about compassion, understanding, but we were also beginning to talk about off air, the complexity of the characters, the people that you're writing about. How did you determine, what's your writing process? Tell me about these people.
Well, I think some of it, the complexity part definitely is influenced by my therapy work, and just, the more you unpack and get to know somebody and their story, the more you understand. And the more you understand yourself also. So there was that. And I think there were people, for an example, this is a bit of a minor or a background character, but one of the main characters is named Josh, and his dad, I think, is probably the most bad guy in the book. But there was a point I was like, okay, but he can't be all bad, because I don't actually believe people are that. And so I chose to give him a little backstory, not a whole lot, but I felt like it would just make it harder. I want it to be hard to 100% like or dislike anyone in the book. And even my protagonist, Kai, I think I try to make her pretty likable, but also she's kind of annoying sometimes, and she gets stuck, and you want her to do things differently and hurry up already and make a certain choice or not. And, I think that's how people are. So I just tried to, anytime somebody felt too one-dimensional, I just tried to add something, because I don't really think people are one-dimensional. So, and
as an author, then taking the experience from your professional world, how was that process for you? Was it triggering at times for you? Was there moments where it was more difficult to write, or what's your process?
Not really. I feel like when I start to get in, I don't know if you ever read Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic, but that's one of my favorite creative books. And I resonate with, she talks about just like the magic of getting in flow. And I think when I am in flow with writing the book, it just kind of, I don't know, it does feel magical that it comes out. And then it's more in the revising stage, where it's these things about trying to add complexity, or, okay, like that was kind of tangential and you didn't really need that. But I feel like that comes for me in the revising, which is where I'm at with my other works in progress at the moment. But the first draft, to me, at least with this book, was very much like a flow state, kind of just, I don't know. It feels like Kai and Josh are almost like alive, and I'm just kind of telling their story.
So where was the inspiration for the book?
Part of it, I think I guess the first nugget of inspiration was my family had a family that we were friends with, and did a lot of vacations and things together. And there was just kind of a what if, and our families just kind of grew apart. But this idea of these intertwined families, and even for myself with my kids having intertwined families, and just thinking where that can go. And what about when those are pretty dysfunctional families, which wasn't the case for me or in my experiences, but just what could go wrong, I guess. So having a pretty good experience with that, but then wondering, all right, but where could the drama take place in something like that? And, I think when you get enmeshed and all tangled up with each other, things get messy. So, and I like messy. I like writing about messy and hearing about messy. So
And this is your first book, and you've got two more that are in the works?
Yeah, I have another one that was actually the first book I wrote, fairly unskillfully, I think now. And so that one needs to be polished up and changed. But I do love the essential story of that book. I just need to write it better. And then but that will hopefully be my third book. The one that's actually in process now is a little bit more of a psychological thriller than this, and but still a lot about relationships and grief, and that's kind of a thing that interests me. So, but that's very much in the revision stage right now.
And in your practice as a therapist,
Mm-hmm.
are you working with folks who struggle with substance use, with trauma, with domestic violence?
Yes, a lot of those things. I don't have advanced training in trauma or substance use. And so if someone calls and that's their presenting issue, I don't usually take those cases. But given that I work with people on grief and depression and anxiety, grief, depression, anxiety, and relationship issues are mostly what I work with, but it often unfolds that there is trauma or there is addiction or there is other things going on. And so I know enough about all those things, and I've had a lot of experience with all those things in this room and outside this room with, personal friends and those kinds of things. So I certainly see it a lot. Yeah.
We had an author on who wrote a book on grief, and he said that we grieve in proportion to how much we loved. Do you agree with that?
I do. And that's again, in this first book that I will get back to, that's not word for word, but very much one of the characters says to the other when this one character is lost in pain and the other one's saying, well, yeah, because you love that person so deeply and such a meaningful part of your life. So yes. And I think sometimes people, not just with grief, but people have a lot of trouble expressing their emotions and articulating their emotions and understanding their emotions. And so I think sometimes people can be devastated by grief, but it doesn't actually look like that from the outside because they don't even know how to, what that would mean or what that would look like. And so I think it doesn't always look like devastation, even when it is.
I agree. I think it's so pervasive. I don't know whether it's just our culture or whether it's the world, where it's so difficult to express sometimes what we feel. What's your take on that?
Well, I think there's the whole stigma of vulnerability is weakness, which is so false, but so prominent that people think, especially for men, although I think that's changing, but I think that there is this, men don't cry kind of a thing that I do think is softening, but I still think that that's there. But yeah, I think there's this independent bootstrap spirit of America that doesn't make room for being sad or being feeling a little lost or disappointed, things like that. And so I think that it's just not culturally normative necessarily to talk about. But I will say I work with teenagers a lot, and I love and I'm so encouraged because when I was a kid, I don't know anybody who went to therapy, or I'm sure there were people going to therapy, but I just didn't know about it. But now my teenage clients constantly are like, so I told my friend what you said, and she said that her therapist said da 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 da. And I'm like, oh, they're all just talking about being in therapy and they're talking about their feelings. And so I'm encouraged by that. I think that is getting better. I also think, though, it feeds into what we were talking about, which is addiction of any sort, whether that's substances or media, or social media, video games, any of that stuff is just that numbing, right? I can't feel it. I'm starting to feel it. Let me get rid of that feeling with something because it's so uncomfortable. And it's I don't know. I think there's just this belief that you shouldn't be distressed, which is completely not true. It's fine. People get distressed all the time, and you can feel it and get through it.
Yeah. Yeah. Mark, what do you think about this? You've got 3 kids. I'm always impressed by how kids are just talking and exploring their emotions. What do you think?
Well, we've talked about this a lot on the Dr. Joe show. I think COVID had a really positive impact on people's ability to share and realize they're not alone and to be vulnerable. Holly, I often say vulnerability is a superpower. It's not our grandfather's old vulnerability, right? So I too am encouraged by the generations coming up who are freely, openly discussing this, what used to be invisible disease. So all of what you're saying is resonating. And I think, the more we talk, the more folks feel comfortable sharing, the better we all will be as a community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I have 3 adult men, boys, children, non-children.
Don't you, let me just stop. Don't you love that oxymoron? Your adult child. I love that. This is my adult child. Sorry, God, didn't mean to cut you off, but
but I just think I use that a lot because people are like, oh, and clients and personal, like, well, but they're boys and so they don't talk or they don't whatever. And I'm like, that's not, you can mold that. And part of it is personality for my boys, just innate personality. And part of it is because I was constantly, I'm sure, exhaustingly saying, tell me how you feel. How does that make you feel? Tell me more. So, they are pretty good at talking about that. And so I think that parents certainly can have a lot of influence in shaping that.
Yeah, it's very true. And we model it, If we don't talk about something, then we're sending the message, don't talk about something. Mm-hmm. And that's why we take commercial breaks, really, because I know that I want to encourage our sponsors to talk about what they want to talk about. So, Larry, if it's okay with you, we'll encourage our sponsors. We'll take a commercial break and we'll be right back with the Dr. Joe Show.
Hey, folks, welcome back. So any thoughts? Do you listen to other podcasts? Do you see how they do the sponsors? Is there a way that they're utilizing sponsors that you enjoy or you don't enjoy? I listen to SmartList, and I really enjoy how the co-hosts share the voiceover for the product or service. It's really funny for the most part, but it's unique. It's them really endorsing. Does that work? What do you think?
And we are back with the Dr. Joe Show with author, therapist, Holly LaBarbera.
You just like saying that now, don't you?
I'm going to say it all day tomorrow.
Yeah, it's a great name.
LaBarbera.
LaBarbera.
It rolls nicely.
It really does. So Holly, we were talking off air a little bit about really the relationships that you build, and how sometimes you don't always like someone, and then you learn about their backstory, and it changes your perspective. So why don't you, without audience, just so we don't want to give away the book. We don't want to do any spoilers, but learn about these folks and come and read the book. So the relationships, let's talk about that.
Yeah. So I think when I first conceived of the book, it was the central love story, which is between Kai and Josh, is kind of this central romantic love story. But then as I was developing it and writing it, I really wanted to explore kind of complexity and complications of all the different forms of love within families and among friends, and whether you love yourself or you don't, and kind of how all of those different experiences shape who you are and how you can move forward in love and relationships. So,
but it's also really interesting because, folks, you start off by learning about Kai, who is 9 years old when we first meet her, or 7, or
I think she's 8. Yeah, 7 or 8.
Yeah, and she's in love. She has a person who she knows this is the one. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the evolution of that is fascinating.
Well, and I think to me, like when you're saying how about complexity of people, and it's not always for me with Kai, with Josh, Kai thinks Josh is 100% amazing in all ways, flawless, perfect person. and coming to realize that's not true either, so I wanted to make, like I said, these bad guys more understandable and relatable, but also that like there aren't any exclusively good guys either. So,
and I think in terms of our world, where we work with folks with substance use problems, with mental health problems, I think that is imperative, because our world judges, and that's what the stigma is. Mark's heard me say this so many times. We have contributed to stigma by simply using the word disorder.
Yes.
As soon as we use the word disorder, we separate people into groups.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to understand who that person is, because you could have written characters, substance use and domestic violence, that you just say, well, I don't want to know about these people. And yet they're people.
Yeah. And I loved most of them. There's a few that I probably don't, but and I think that's important in my work as a therapist. And, I find things to love about people, I think, or I try to. I do not always succeed. I don't want to make it sound like I'm so amazing, but that's my ambition, at least. Yeah. It's easier with pretend characters because I can make them whatever I want.
Right. And again, this is what the I am approach is trying to say, is let's step back and look again at who we are, why we do what we do, based on our response to the environment and the way it's influencing us and how we respond to it. And it tries to move away from that judgment. And I really appreciated that in your book. I mean, that resonated, that it's not judgmental, and yet you demonstrate and illustrate part of the dark side of who we are as human beings.
Yeah. And I was thinking about my character Kai and your model. Should I jump to that now? Sure. I don't know. Right. But, and so she has a twin brother in the book. And so there's kind of your realms, like this home realm and the biological realm are to some degree the same, although I would argue they're not exactly the same. I think Cade's brain is different than Kai's brain. But there's obviously a lot of biological genetic similarity. They grow up in the same household, although again, different interactions with their parents. But then there's the social realm that is very different because of kind of underlying personality, and then that and how it affects the your IC realm of Kai sees herself as friendly and fun and sociable, and others see her that way, and she sees herself that way. And her brother does not see himself that way. And he's bullied and there's reinforcement there. He's not a traditional boy, interested in the traditional things. And so, but when I was reading up about your model, I'm like, yeah, it's absolutely what's going on for her and for them. And I mean, I could do that with all the characters, but I won't.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Not that you won't do that, but I appreciate you applying the model to it. I know what came to mind was, I remember my brother-in-law has twins, a boy and a girl, and they decided to change their pediatrician when the pediatrician said, "Are they identical?" He says, "Well, no, actually, it's a boy and a girl, so they got a different pediatrician."
Yeah.
But yeah, so the brother, how did you conceptualize him? Because he's an artist as well.
Yeah, he is. Well, there was a little nugget of some of the things. I mean, the relationship between Kai and her brother when they're young is very reminiscent of my relationship with my brother. Mm-hmm. Not that my brother is Cade at all, but being very close, and he's also not my twin. But so I think there was that. And then again, I needed it to be messy. So I created this other messy layer. But I think it also comes from stories I've heard and these things that do really challenge families in whether they can stay together or not. So I don't like the ripped family apart phrase, but that's kind of what it feels like. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of wanted to explore that too.
And then there's the violence within the family, and mm-hmm. how sometimes that just becomes the norm.
Right. Right.
So how do you implement that? Talk about that.
Well, I put the violence in the other family, not our main character family, or for the most part, I guess, for the most part in the other family, because I did feel like it was going to be too much for my main character's family to overcome, in terms of likability.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of wanted to put that a little farther away. But it also mattered to me that the ways in which I wanted Josh to be flawed trickles down from his family experience with violence. And
but there's that scene where just to go over, do you want to just give the audience a sort of table set the families and the characters?
Okay. So it's these two intertwined families. So Kai's father and Josh's father have been best friends since forever, or for a very long time, since before they had kids or anything. And then the wives were brought into it, and then the kids were brought into it. Kai has a twin brother, Cade, and in the other family, there's 5 kids. So there's 4 kids, 3 boys and a girl. And so they do a lot of things together. They spend a lot of time together. Both dads end up they are alcoholics. I don't think you know that. Well, no, you know that pretty early on, I suppose. And then their alcoholism brings different problems to each of the families, basically.
Yeah. But there's this...
and yes, Kai is in love with Josh from the time she can, right. Her earliest memory, she's in love with Josh. So
and he's about what, 4 or 5 years older than her.
Yeah, she's 4 years older, so it feels, a little creepy at the beginning, but
right.
When you're 21 and 25, it doesn't matter anymore.
Right. But there's also this scene in the book where Kai's dad tries to explain, without going into detail, why Josh's dad is the way he is. And I think that's one of the most important things that we can do is try to help people understand, why is this person doing what they're doing?
Yeah. And that was actually one of the later things I put in the book. It was one of the last things. And again, it was because a lot of the feedback I got from people reading was like, oh, I hate that guy. And I'm like, well, yeah. And I mean, he's definitely not a hero of the story, but I didn't want it to be that easy for people to just hate him without thinking about it.
And yet that's what people do, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it feels important in that moment to say, yeah, it's easier to hate someone when you don't understand all the things that they've struggled with, and once you do understand all the things they've struggled with, now what, it's clear.
So what about that? What is that about us as human beings from your perspective as a therapist? That we're so quick to dismiss, and yet we get more information and something shifts. What do you think?
Well, I think the initial judgment, probably comes just like evolutionary brain and survival skills, right? Of having to make a quick decision, like, is this safe? Is this not safe? And so you just make a quick judgment about that. And then I think there's some ways that our brain hasn't caught up to our society, and that's not really necessary anymore. And actually is a hindrance rather than a help at this point. But I think we just aren't, I think it comes again from a good place of the brain with just you need to pay attention to danger, right? So you're on the lookout for that. And so you judge that in a quick way. But I think it just allows for so many more connections and growth and learning and compassion when you can have that understanding, which I think is better for us now in our world, but just harder to do.
I want to bring Mark into this for a moment, because in your experience as a lawyer, didn't you shift away from sort of the conflictual relationship stuff to doing what you're doing now in real estate law, where you're just trying to help people feel safe at home?
Yeah, So I was never comfortable with the conflict part of the law. In the evolution of my career, I did defend criminals in the very beginning. However, the litigation, the fighting, the dropping the gloves, the drawing the lines in the sand, that never resonated with me. So I always sought proactive legal services so that people could avoid that, because
creates a lot of negative energy, a lot of anxiety, a lot of distrust. There's a lot of toxicity around litigation, right? So, who is this benefiting? Why is this happening? So we've always focused on proactive planning with our real estate group that helps keep people organized and squared away with their real estate, with their estate planning for their individual self, so that as they, pass their earthly body on and leave to their heirs, that there's no disputes that they're leaving behind. And, we're very bullish on mediation as a alternative way of resolving disputes. So the ADR, alternative dispute resolutions, is a growing practice, and we have folks that do the mediation so that we can find middle and still have relationships going forward, as opposed to those nuclear options where folks that are terminating relationships, whether it's a marriage or a business relationship, they can maintain civility and value one another going forward. It's not working out for whatever reason. This can be done amicably in a really methodical way, so that, again, they don't hate one another. And quite frankly, I've said this a lot publicly, and that's who's really benefiting by this, and oftentimes it's only the attorneys.
Yeah. And what we're grateful for is that it's not only the attorneys that are benefiting from this, but our sponsors as well, and our audience who listens to our sponsors. So, Larry, let's take a commercial break. We'll be right back. I want to say it with Holly LaBarbera. No, did I get it? Right back. Yeah, right back with the Dr. Joe Show.
Hey, welcome back. And again, we're super grateful for you listening to the Dr. Joe Show. If you have anyone that you think might be a good sponsor, shoot us an email at drjoepodcast@gmail.com. DRJOE podcast@gmail.com. Give us your thoughts about the show too. We're wondering, are we talking to the trees, or are people really gaining value in this? Please let us know. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of the show.
And we're back with the Dr. Joe Show, here live on WATD 95.9, your all things South Shore Radio. We're here with therapist and author Holly LaBarbera, talking about her new book.
I just love the cadence to that.
It's tough with the dyslexia, you look at that name and it kind of blurs together a little bit.
Yeah.
LaBarbera.
Yeah, but you're doing it, and it's really wonderful, and it's a great book. Let's just review. How do people get the book?
You can get it anywhere you normally get books. So it's bookshop.org is my recommendation, or you can go to my website, which is hollyclabarbera.com, and order it through Bookshop from my website. But you can get it at any of the normal other real retailers that you might use.
And how did you come up with the title? It's always challenging to come up with a title.
Well, the title was in my head pretty early on, and the book is divided into 3 parts, which in the beginning, part 1 is certainty, because I think this happens when we're young. We think we know everything. And then this traumatic thing happens for Kai, and then we move into the doubt section of the book, where she just doesn't know what she believes in, or if she believes in anything. And then the last section is faith. And so she kind of finds faith in herself. And so to me, that was all you know. And it was also this idea that whatever it is you know in that moment is enough for that moment. And so that was kind of my thinking too, is like, all I know now is enough for now.
Yeah.
I know it's part of your model too, with the max, doing the best version that you are right now, and also hoping to be better in the next moment.
Yeah.
So,
and that, I appreciate that. That is the I am. And I truly believe that we are at a current maximum potential, with potential to change the very next second to another maximum potential. Because this is who we are. We spend so much time judging ourselves as less than and broken. And I think in what I know, there's that risk as well of judging these characters as less than and broken because they're drinking or because they're using or because they then enact whatever has happened in that impulsive limbic way.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's good that we don't do that. But boy, we do so much in so many ways. We judge each other and then are astonished that the other person judges us in return.
Yes. And I also, I think your idea of like controlling no one, but influencing everyone that resonated with me with the book and in my work. And this, I think Kai for a very long time tries to control the people around her and realizes she can't. And yet also there is this other piece of the book that like everyone is influencing each other like throughout the whole book, but they also can't actually control anybody other than themselves and their own decisions and choices. So,
right. Absolutely. And it takes a lot of pressure off you if you realize that you can't control anyone.
Yeah. But don't you think that's linked to judgment? Like, I feel like when we're like, I know what's right, and so I'm going to control you to do what's right. I mean, I just think, maybe they're not always linked, but it feels highly linked to me, like judging and then trying to control outcomes.
Yeah. If your motivation is to help somebody else, but sometimes our motivation, we'd like to think that we're trying to help someone else, but it's really sort of self-serving in so many ways. The part about the aggression in the book is also so important for people to understand, because my point of view is that we have to dehumanize somebody else to really be aggressive towards them. That our human brain, it's so compassionate, we just wouldn't hurt someone. But as soon as we put them in a different group,
yes,
then we can hurt them because they're not human anymore. We do this throughout society in so many ways.
Yep. Yes.
And then are astonished that they do it back to us. You know, we're coming to the end of the show. We have a few minutes, because I want to really discuss this. In the I am, because the four domains interact, right? The home domain, the social domain, the biological, and the I see, the way I see myself, the way I think other people see me. Because they interact, a small change in any domain can have a big effect. Don't need to change everything. So, Holly, based on what we're talking about tonight, what small change can you recommend to our listeners?
Well, I thought about this, and I'm going to say a cheesy answer first, which is I say this to clients all the time. I don't think it matters what your small change is, as long as it's something. You know, I tell people okay, if it's getting in the shower today when you haven't showered in a week, then that's the small change. Like I don't think it actually matters. But I will also say, I'll give a more specific actual answer, which is, for myself, probably, I don't know, over a year ago, I really made a commitment to taking a walk every morning. And sometimes it's shorter, sometimes it's longer. Sometimes I listen to music. Sometimes I just listen to the birds. But that feels like a small change that has made a huge difference in my mood and my just emotional availability and energy wise throughout the day. It just grounds me and feels good. So that is, I think, a really great small change.
Yeah. I'm just curious, given what was going on in your IM at the time, how'd you make that decision?
Oh, that's a great question. You stumped me there. I'm trying to think what was going on. I think it was also, well, maybe it was that in 2023, I chose a word of the year, which was surrender. And part of that was, I don't know, somehow grounding myself in physical movement, but not requiring that it be, a big, hard Peloton class or something like that. Like just something I liked, felt like a surrender of sorts. So which realm would that be? I'm not sure.
It's all four. So that I see the way we see ourselves, we have such a tendency to see ourselves as less than and broken.
Yep.
But even that's an I am. If you don't like that, you can change it, but try to understand why you view yourself that way. And, you're just going to have an effect on your biological domain. It's going to increase your cortisol levels and all sorts of stuff will happen. What sort of brings us to the second truth of the I am, that everyone's got one. Everyone is interested through their I see domain the way you see them, which is going to have an effect on their biological domain, because, it feels different when you feel respected or disrespected. And you're part of someone's home or social domain. So the second truth of the I am, you control no one, you influence everyone. You get to choose the kind of influence you want to be. Mark, would you just say Holly's name for me?
LaBarbera.
What kind of influence do you want to be?
I want to bring hope and positivity, I think, and not in a Pollyanna, overly cheerful way, but in a deep belief way. I am hopeful and I am optimistic. And I generally am pretty positive. So I think there's, we already have said, but there's so much negativity. And I think bringing that more like a smile and how was your day and saying thank you to the barista at Starbucks. And I think there's so many opportunities to just bring a little bit of positive energy to things. And I try, again, I'm not flawless and I don't always succeed, but that is my intention, to try to bring some positivity.
And in the book, there is hope, but one has to go through this journey of almost despair to get there. Yeah.
And I think thank you for rounding back to that, because we're talking about all these hard things in the book, and there are hard things in the book. And Kai has amazing friends. She has a great relationship with her mom. She has, there is a lot of hope and uplifting and resilience to all these things that happen. And that is how I see the world. Yes, bad things are going to happen. That happens. And finding the strength and the support you need to get through that is what's actually important, and what I was trying to be writing about.
Yeah. And you succeeded. I mean, we know that for every resilient child, there's at least somebody who sees them as valuable. And that's definitely the relationship between Kai and her mom.
Yeah. Thank you.
I want to thank you so much, folks. The book's coming out June 11th. Please try to grab a copy. What I Know. It is a great read, and look forward to having you back on the show for the next couple of books.
That'd be great. Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, folks. We'll see you next week. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, Larry. Rush with madness. Is it sadness or just a show? Then go, 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 go.